Well guys, some of you saw a month or so back, I posted a video of this incredible discovery I made that I could use the power feeder from this shaper to run my table saw. Just having a power feeder takes a shop just to a whole nother level. I'm not like a high-end cabinet maker who has a power feeder on everything. So just making this little step up was huge, but we're actually gonna take it to a whole nother level, and we're gonna take this power feeder from my shaper and change it up so that I can use it on my table saw whenever I want without having to bring the shaper over here. The answer to my power feeder woes lies in this box right here. This is a power feeder mount by Magswitch. Basically uses some incredibly powerful magnets that you can mount your power feeder to hold it in place on the cast surface on your table saw or other equipment for that matter. It's pretty incredible. So because my workflow is more related to milling large material a lot of times, even more so than cabinet work, I really want to be able to use this large 1 horsepower power feeder on the table saw with these magnets. That means it's gonna take a pretty substantial amount of hold down power for this thing because it's a 1 horsepower unit and it's pretty stinking heavy. But I think we're still gonna be able to use this. I've talked to other guys who use this mount and they say it handles a 1 horsepower power feeder just fine, so we're gonna find out. You'll notice that the power feeder is mounted with 4 bolts. And a lot of equipment's already gonna come with these 4 bolt holes tapped out so that you can mount stuff like this. In order to mount a feeder this large, it uses M12 bolts, and you're probably gonna want this plate. This is an additional pit plate you have to buy separately, and what it does is it joins these 2 sections of magnets together like so. We'll bolt these together there. You can even add another 2 additional magnets if you really wanted to, but then we'll bolt the power feeder onto this plate just like it's bolted on right there. Now you may be wondering, Spencer, why don't you just permanently mount the power feeder to the table saw? That's what a lot of guys do. Well, I could do that if it wasn't for the fact that this is my only table saw in the shop at this time. Plan to probably add more in the future. But for now, I need to have the ability to break down large sheets of plywood on this table saw. So if I mount this power feeder in either corner of the saw, it's gonna greatly reduce my capacity for breaking down sheet goods. Typically, you're gonna see a power feeder permanently mounted on a table saw whenever it's a saw that's really only getting used for ripping. I'm gonna start off by bolting this thing together. They supply these bolts with it. And here we are. We've got our 2 Magswitch magnets. You can see those big, powerful magnets on the bottom here. And like I said, if you needed an insane amount of holding power, you could double this and add another 2 magnets on this side as well, but I don't think that's necessary. So you'll see floating around really easy here. All we've got to do is turn the dial on both of these, and it is sucking this down fast to the table. Very strong, incredible breakaway strength. To get started taking this power feeder off of the shaper, I'm gonna swing it around and I'm gonna drop the head all the way down so that it's resting on the table saw, which will relieve the pressure over here on the base so that I can unbolt that. I'm unbolted now and I want to take this lower bracket off, but I want to be very careful. If I have this loosened, this bracket will slip off and I can drop it on my foot and it's extremely heavy and it would probably break bones. So doing this, I'm going to try to be very cautious and make sure I don't drop this thing because it just slid on there like that. Okay, so now, fingers crossed, hopefully the holes line up with this. And that looks pretty good. As you can see here, this is pretty standard spacing, so dropping this right on top lines up really well with everything, so we're good to go there. I'm actually really surprised. I thought the bolts that I had been using that came with the power feeder to mount on the shaper would be too long, but they're actually not, so that's awesome. Won't have to run to the hardware store to get any different M12 bolts. Now I'll go ahead and lock the magnets down. Finish tightening these bolts. Now we just got to figure out how to get this big shaft back in place. Looks like we're gonna have to lift it old-fashioned way. Or we do this. Done. Man, sometimes I don't know about this brain of mine. There we go. Whew. Okay, so off camera, I made some adjustments just getting this set up. My thought is most of the time I'll want to have the feeder mounted up in this top left corner. That way I have the ability to freely move my fence wherever I want. But in the event that for some reason I did want to mount the feeder on this side, which I don't think I really will, I think that the way I have it, I should be able to disconnect these. There we go. I can flip it around. The problem with that is then the rollers are on this side. So I really don't think I'm going to use it that way. Guys, I'm obviously not a power feeder expert here. I think up here, all the way up on this top left corner is where I'm going to use it. So let me just crank this down quick and I'll show you. And lift that up. And it should be fairly simple to make adjustments up here. It's a little bit cramped actually because this is so big. But I've got my rollers just about over the blade right there so I can move them over, move them this way, that way. I can turn this. Should work out pretty good. Here is a close-up on these rollers. Why am I calling them rollers? The magnets. Should work out pretty good. Let's talk a little bit about strength test. I've been testing this out a little bit. I can get it to break loose. You know, if I put this over here and start really putting my weight on it, I can get the magnets to break free. But any amount of practical force that I'm putting on this, it's handling it just fine. It doesn't make me feel like I'm doing something dangerous or anything like that. I think it's gonna work really well. Obviously, whenever you get your head further out, you have more leverage, more weight going down versus using a smaller power feeder or keeping your head further in here, which this is actually about where I would probably typically be using it. So there's way less leverage being exerted down here from the weight of the head. The next great question is, how easy is it to take on and off? So I've got it lowered down right now so the head is resting on my table saw surface. I'm just gonna push the lever over and turn the dial, and that releases the magnets. Very simple to do that. I'm gonna put this cord up here so that I don't trip all over it. And the way I envision using this is probably just pulling this to the side and setting it down on the floor right here. I don't think I'm gonna do anything else with it besides that. So I'm actually gonna lock these different things down because I've got this thing all loosey-goosey. There we go. Now again, this is no small feeder. This thing is heavy. It's making me second guess having a 1 horsepower up here. Here we are, setting on the floor over here. Let's set it up again. Okay, real-time setup simulation, starting now. This is the hardest part. Okay, she's locked down. That was basically a minute to get it set up. Before any of you guys call me a pansy, I just looked up the weight on this power feeder. The PF41 is 158 pounds. Plus the magnets, that's a 160-pound lift. I'm not gonna lie, that's a very awkward 160-pound lift to get off the floor up to there. Not that big a deal, but it's heavy. Not for the faint of heart on that. All right, let's do some cutting. Got the feeder turned on here, set up, scrap 1 by. We'll run it through a few times, see how she works. Guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I am super excited about these mounts. I think they're gonna work out really well. I kinda wanna get another set now and do like a smaller power feeder, like maybe a 1/2 horsepower or so. That way it's not quite as big to move up and down all the time. But whenever I'm running 16-foot long boards, you really need the size of this 1 horsepower feeder, so beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Thanks for watching. Affiliate links to these Magswitch Power Feeder mounts will be in the video description and the top comment. They are available on Amazon. Appreciate you guys supporting me by using those links, and we'll see you on the next video.